I think this is my first live ever here on the Educator Aid at Love Learning You channel, our YouTube channel here, and I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that you are here. I have the sun coming out on my patio here, and I've got my cup of coffee, so let's hop into it. On these particular lives, I will be diving into some previews of our program that is launching in September. So you have some time to think it through and think about your commitments to yourself. And I mainly want to also speak to K-12 educators if you see this from any place around the world. One of the things that has really carried me through my 20 plus year career almost in K-12 education, some of the toughest systems honestly in the world that I've served in, and now having done so as a teacher, school leader, literacy coach, as well as now an external consultant to not only K-12 schools but also corporations and nonprofits. So having that tri-sector experience and lens has been really important for my growth as a practitioner. And if anything, at the end of the day, I am a learner and a teacher. I love teaching and I love learning. And I also love sharing with you all, hence why we shifted back, end of 2023, I think, beginning of 2024, we shifted from calling the podcast Cultural Capacity to Love Learning You. One of the realizations I had is that for me, so much of my journey has involved reading and writing, and also understanding how do I integrate and marry these different practices that are so important to me, but also I now am seeing this world where through a very technical lens and experiences that I've had, excuse me, in leadership, I'm seeing these correlations of then also doing inner child work through some trauma I've been through. So I've been able to start to connect these dots, and I will also say very clearly and loudly that I'm also a follower of Jesus Christ, and I proclaim the name of Yahweh. I say that not as a judgment or disclaimer, but to let you all know who I am and a little about me, and you can decide if you want to stay put and you want to follow along, or if it's not for you right now. That's okay. So the three things though that kept coming up for me as I was journaling this morning, and I said, let me go live. We have some really amazing featured voices guest episodes coming out in the next few months, so please be sure you're subscribed, because you will already see who's kind of in the queue and up and coming in the upcoming months. And I am still working to program those every day. So one of the shifts that's happened for me, even in this kind of not just through entrepreneurial, but really my whole life, a lot of it has been about books and reading and writing. Being a reader and writer myself, this is a text that I've gotten really serious the past few years about implementing strategies and systems from. So this first text is more of an entrepreneurial one, pretty thick, pretty hefty, lots of great resources from Timothy Ferriss. But one of the realizations I had was that I was creating a lot of the same old stuck mindsets of workaholism and performance that I had created when I was working within a system, um, within K-12 school systems, not as an external self-employed business owner who's a consultant now and a practitioner, researcher in different ways. That has required every single time in my life, it's like you're putting training wheels on for the first time with something. I love that because I love learning new things and I love change. And I realize that that's been a really big part of my story and continues to be. And then how do I adapt to that? And what does that look like in my own life? There are certain things even in my personal life that you might hear or over time as I continue to share more openly on the podcast, on Love Learning You, the podcast, and here on the different channels on YouTube and stuff that we have. I will be very transparent about that, which is I was often running on empty and completely unaware of how much I was being influenced by just the work pace and not taking enough pauses in between. So I say that as a person who is still a recovering workaholic, but I've also now had enough seasons and chapters in my business, outlived a global pandemic. Thank you, God, for just the blessings and the provision. But I say that because that is only by the grace of of God. And that is what I believe. Not to turn you off if you are struggling with your faith or your unbelief. I go and have been in those periods of time many times myself, and that's the journey, that's the soul's journey here in this life on earth. Is we learn the lessons, we learn and unlearn, we learn how to evolve and expand our thinking, and then we also learn maybe what we're not comfortable with, what we're not comfortable with doing or saying. So welcome if you joined. This is a channel for professionals who are interested in just learning more about who they are as a professional, their soul's journey. I'm the lead practitioner here at Educator Aid and the host of Love Learning You, hostess, Justine Gonzalez. But the three topics that I was pondering this morning, and I want to just offer some recommendations for books and then give a preview for an upcoming book study and what we're going to dive into here when we go live to kind of preview that over the summer months, is give you a taste of how I typically study a text, the different practices that I use with it, and then when you look at our syllabus, which is linked below, when you look at that in these notes, then you can make a decision as a professional, because again, this is a model that I've been employing for myself. I just haven't created a program yet for this. This is the first program I'm creating because I'm starting to connect the dots very simply of what are the moves that I have made, because questions I get more often than not are, how did you become a principal at such a young age? How did you achieve XYZ? Those are typically questions that people ask me first when they first meet me and if they don't know me personally, which is fine. That's a normal question you get, especially as a business owner, and especially if people know that you've held some form of success in your career. So I put all of that out there to say it's okay along your journey to just share transparently. And so one of those, again, realizations in studying some of Timothy Ferriss's work, welcome if you hopped on or you fast forwarded, the 4-Hour Work Week, that was my first recommendation. And I'm just talking through a couple key texts that we are actually going to dive into in our Purposeful Pages Book Circles program that kicks off in my birthday month, September. So I'll be happy if you can join. But here's some pondering notes. There were 3 big areas that stuck out to me personally, and I'm simply sharing what I do on a typical basis because these are practices that have helped me. If these topics don't interest you, keep it moving. It's fine. And also, I am happily married and spoken for with someone I love. So if you're in the comments, thank you for the compliments. Thank you for showing up. But I am betrothed to someone that I love dearly, and I appreciate the compliments. So back to it, the 3 areas though, and I correlated these because as I'm sitting outside recording this, I'm sitting beside one of my garden areas. My day usually starts at 5 or 6 a.m. with watering and weeding and keeping up with different garden areas at my current home. So plants, I've always been drawn to plants, flowers, nature, watching it, observing it since I'm a kid. Counting and categorizing the different things, learning about the different things. And one thing you'll know if you follow, and I'll link that here too, I just started a personal YouTube channel here, and that's mainly just gardening, cooking, adventures. And so if you like that lighter side and you're like, I don't really care for your podcast, Justine, that's fine, but I do have a personal YouTube I just started, for that reason, because it's another realization. And here's what I'll say, this is something that is actually coming up in the syllabus for the Purposeful Pages book circle that kicks off in September. One of our sessions, and I get requests asking, oh, how do you read your birth chart? How do you know how to look at some of these things? And how do you also rectify that, like, you didn't necessarily, like, you grew up in a very, very religious atmosphere, conservative atmosphere, Justine. So that's part of my story, and I'll be getting into that in the program. But this, and also how I've shifted some of those beliefs over the years that were harmful, not only to myself and to others, but how that journey is going and continues to go. So this is my side reel astrology guide, and it's by Dana Lynn Nichols. So if you've heard of her, she's awesome. You can follow her on YouTube here as well. And then texts like this one that a friend gifted me from France, a dear friend of mine who worked on this collaborative project with some other unique souls, and just studying some of those practices. So that is embedded as one thing, but this is also a really important part of your journey. If you haven't done any work of understanding, I started with nature as one of my big ones. The reason why I realized I was drawn to astrology often as an adult, to the stars, to the sun and moon, the cycles. Number one, I learned a lot about it over the years growing up because I worked outside and I loved being outside, and I grew up fishing with my dad outside all the time, and learning from him. So I've had some really, really amazing teachers. I come from long lineages on both sides of my family of not only farmers but also different practitioners, medicine practitioners, herbalists, etc. And then I also have bloodlines from 3 or 4 Native American tribes, some in South and Central America, and then I believe Cherokee in North America in particular. So I say that because I also have English, Irish, Scottish, I have a lot of Swiss blood that came back as a strong one. But I say this because you often will hear me talk about culture. It's a research and passion area of mine. It's something I teach on and have for years because I grew up in a bicultural home. And I have lots of family and relatives that are Amish and Mennonite, which, if you know anything about it, very closed off, very conservative, religious, has a strong Dutch Swiss origin. If you trace back our lineages on that family bloodline for me to the 13 and 1400s, even 1200s. So we have that. Then on my father's side, I have Greek, Italian, Basque, Taino, Mayan. Oh, there's a lot. North African, like there's a lot. So I say that because I've gone on these journeys. No, not so that you won't have to, but then you can make a decision. So as you watch, you might say, oh, well, she shares this stuff about K-12. I don't really care for that episode or that topic. That's fine. We want you to be able to pick and choose. And when I say we, I mean me, and then also some of my network of teammates. So at any given time throughout 7 years, I have worked with a number of incredible practitioners, strategic partners, other business owners and entrepreneurs. One of my realizations in this journey, and why books have been so important to my learning over the years. And then we know, as humans, learning comes from knowledge, acquiring knowledge in books or on podcasts or even YouTube videos, etc., classes, schooling, pastors, teachers, gurus, Buddhas, shamans, etc. However you prefer to teach at different, or learn and teach in yourself at different points of your life on your own journey, because that is no one's responsibility except our own. So that you can never point a finger and say, well, nobody taught me that. That could be true that nobody taught you, but also when you realize nobody taught you something, you have to be the one to go make those changes and shifts in your life. So for me, a big of the big three, when I think about myself and patterns of my whole life, my story, whether it's the celebrations and victories and successes, or the traumas, the defeats, and the learnings. That's what I call failures, because it's an opportunity to learn. Try as much stuff as you can on earth. We get time to try things. Be safe, be healthy, but try things out that we're here to explore and learn and apply, and then figure out what works for us and what helps us. So plants, and then I made that correlation to why I'm a strategic systems thinker and great with creating data systems, because plants and nature are all about systems and how they work together, how they work against each other, how they support each other, and the comprehensive and holistic nature of also something I practice as a consultant, which is strategic planning. So the next topic, beliefs. Beliefs are very important to me. It's literally baked into my personality design. And beliefs are they've just been such a major through line, not only in both of my family tree stories, but in my own life story as well. So I'll leave that one parked there, but I also correlated that to the broader topic that we do at Educator Aid on the technical side, to communication. And beliefs a lot of times are about how we communicate them, meaning how we live them out in our behaviors, our decision making, how we speak about them, and how we demonstrate that, hey, this is what I believe. And you notice I'm not saying good beliefs or bad beliefs. It's what you believe. And we attract what we continuously put out, in our belief that we put out into the world. So The final one is balance. My partner Thaddeus of over 10 years challenges me a lot with this. He is very good about advocating for himself and his needs, and I have not always been good about that. So, and he's also a Libra, so they're all about balance. I can't really get away from it, you all. I'm gonna have to keep telling on myself here. I have no choice. But it's a wonderful accountability, and every person we actually meet can act as a mirror for us. They could show us something that, oh, what a relief that I shifted this in my life. They could show us something that, wow, what a blind spot, I didn't know that I thought that way. Or and that can be hard too. You know, it's humbling to have to look at things about ourselves that we don't really enjoy or that don't feel good. And so that final one of balance, to me, that actually has the most to do with leadership. So if I had to think about, okay, as Justine's on this journey of done well in career vein, done well in the self-employed entrepreneurial vein, and I'm saying that by my own reflections. For some people that might be, have you made 500 million in your business? That's not what it is for me. For me is, have I achieved steps closer to what my blueprint is that I'm creating and co-creating with those people I love in my life. And for me, freedom and liberation are far more important than how much money I have in the bank. However, money in the bank and understanding systems of economies are what actually gives us that security and safety, so to speak, even if it's just perceived, to actually be able to then breathe and pause and go, no, I don't have to keep working. This will be fine, and I can do what I love and I'm passionate about. And I want you to know that that's a privilege. There are so many places in the world where we don't get to wake up and necessarily do and make money doing things that we love. And many people are great at accepting that. I've never been a person that has accepted that I shouldn't enjoy what I do. Yes, there are going to be things you don't like about it. There are going to be things you realize, ooh, I'm not great at that. I need to find somebody who's really good at that so that we can complement each other's skill sets. And that's what it means to me to actually partner with people too and find successful partners, because in that process, you also realize what you don't want. So here's a couple of those other books. I mentioned Plants, Beliefs, and Balance. Those are a lot of the things that I tend to gravitate towards. Oh, I think we're still here. I tend to gravitate towards those topics, but then I've had to also kind of peel back those layers and go, so what is it that correlates to what I've chosen as different career paths? And when we start to do that, you start to see those through lines and go, oh, okay, so these are some of my giftings and how I see the world, how I've experienced and lived in the world so far. How do I start to marry these and integrate these experiences together to have a better clarity and understanding of how I can best serve in the world during my time here and live out an aligned purpose that not only brings happiness and health to myself and my loved ones, but to anybody that I meet. And there's been some definite soul searching. I think that it's probably rare if you are in a profession or a career or stage of life where you haven't had to do some deep soul searching. I think that I would question how much you are examining yourself, your life, and your happiness if you haven't had to necessarily do a lot of that soul searching, or if you're finding yourself kind of just searching in general. I go through those periods of time, even as an entrepreneur, even if I have lots of contracts or lots of clients that I happen to be servicing in my portfolio at that particular time or year or month or whatever. Whenever you catch me, it's also getting to a place where I go, I'm not going to compromise what I believe and how I choose to facilitate and all of the things that matter to me the most, my values. I'm not saying yes to clients who don't align. So that's another reality of scaling that I don't know that lots of people talk about. I see people talking online about scaling a business from the perspective of making more money or getting bigger. One of my realizations in the past 3 or 4 years, surviving a pandemic as a small business owner, still just having some just incredible blessings, but with no other explanation than the divine, to be honest, looking out for me. But sometimes you have to go that deep in certain ways and go that hard, so to speak, to realize, I don't, why? And then what? Okay, so you get more clients, and then what? So you decide to hire employees, and then what? And really examining what I really want, how I want to continue to design my business, because you get to decide. You don't have to be beholden to something just because you started out as this or you started out as that. That's why I was sharing my thought process and how I journal, because right now I'm in the process of doing that. And I think we should always be doing that. I've always done that as a person. Just, I'm realizing with feedback from my coaching clients over the years that this is maybe not common. So I'm sharing some of those practices because this has helped me a lot. And this is typically the timing and periods of time I go through when there are shifts happening in my life, in my career, etc. I go back to the wisdom and knowledge of not only my ancestors, but also, number one, God and my faith. And so going back to some texts and what this recommendations are all about, we're at 20 minutes, so I'm going to hop off here. But these are a couple other texts that will likely be influencing the Purposeful Pages book circles. And this one is Edible Wild Plants for Beginners. I love just glancing at this with specific plants that I find or want to look up. These are one strategy that I utilize these type of books over the years for slowly building up not only my home apothecary, but my own knowledge and actually addressing a lot of health issues in my life. So that is also something that if you look at the syllabus, you will notice the themes of what we're going to get into and how the Purposeful Pages book circle can actually support your personal and professional journey simultaneously. So know that that is how this is designed with that in mind. Our two core texts are going to be the Four Agreements and the Untethered Soul. Again, for me, I go back into texts very often and multiple times. I often ponder with them, but that is also what we're going to be grappling with and toiling with in that book circle. And I've designed it that way because that is how, again, I've experienced the most rapid growth over the years and I know sometimes, especially in the influencer culture age, it gets overdone to do, online stuff. But for me, I'm like, I want to be in space with people, but I want to get back to even pre-pandemic when it wasn't like, oh, let's just pop up and try to have a webinar or do these things, which so many of us tried to do because we're just trying to help and we didn't know what to do. But the reality is, if we can keep showing up and putting in the work little by little on ourselves, you're going to see the progress. So for example, plants and flowers are something I've studied and loved since I was a kid. That's an entire world though that you'll never exhaust learning and exploring, because there's also, pardon me while I shift here, there's also so many new evolutions that happen right alongside us as humans. So you can never not keep learning. It's totally never ending. And that's one thing I love about just being in nature, absorbing nature, and just relishing in that wisdom that just by being, the trees and the plants and the leaves and the blades of grass can give us. And I think that that's beautiful. I work to understand a lot how an organization might be struggling with a strategic planning issue or a strategic change management issue through the lens of understanding, okay, if I was trying to revive this plant that's dying, like I have these Mexican petunias out front and they're not doing the best, but I'm playing with the soil and how I can fertilize them properly. I bought them on sale and I said, ooh, let me exercise my green thumb and try to revitalize these, because they were so cheap and they're really pretty, but they were already like dried out and kind of dying when I bought them. So they're slowly but surely coming back. But I guess I say that because I like that process. Man, I love that process. I love that process in the kitchen. I love that process in creating even a proposal for partnerships, when I've done grant writing, when I develop a book outline, when I develop unit plans or design lesson plans when I used to teach, or an agenda for leadership executives that I work with. You see the correlation, whether it was me figuring out how to solve an issue in a garden or an issue in an organization, almost any pattern in anything that I teach, it's actually coming from something I've learned from nature, which is actually something from God, the creator. And so full circle, here we are. A couple of the other texts that will definitely influence and be pulled on and have influence as I continue to build the syllabus in the coming months before we kick off in September. One of them is the First Nations version of the New Testament. There was input from over 25 tribes to develop this, and it was just released, the first edition, in 2021. So this actually marries in the language of First Nations tribes and those traditional stories of Creator, Father in the sky, etc., of how it correlated exactly to the same New Testament journeys, and just with different language. So for me, this has been a great part of my beliefs journey, because in 2022, my mother passed away unexpectedly, and I went through a lot of struggle with depression, and still struggle with that at times, to be honest, and all amidst while running a large portfolio of clients. So this has been my past 2 years of also kind of resetting and recalibrating, realigning, and really doing some work on myself, to be honest. So I'm still there. I hope you're still there and committed to yourself, devoted to yourself. If you devote to nothing else today, devote to committing to doing one new thing for yourself every day. Even if it's just, oh, I'm going to read a new article online from a different newspaper, or I'm going to listen to a new podcast just because I've never heard of this person and they look different than me. Whatever that thing that motivates you, I would just encourage you to keep learning. It is not only the thing that keeps our brains healthy and fertile as we continue to age, it is what creates new neural pathways. Our neural pathways have to be developed after the age of 24, 25. So if we don't actively seek out opportunities to expand and go out of our comfort zone, that gets challenging. So final text, I also do study the original books of the Ethiopian Bible that are not included in the Protestant canon, as well as the Apocrypha, etc. So I incorporate a lot of different perspectives, even if I am looking at the wisdom and the teachings of the Bible. I am careful about what I choose to introduce when, but we will talk about also some astrological practices and different sets of beliefs, actually. But our 2 core texts for that, and why I just wanted to be in space with you all today and try my hand here at a YouTube Live. I wanted to see how it goes, but also just say hello and start to engage in some different ways. We have reached over 100 subscribers. Woohoo! Make sure you hit subscribe if you haven't. Tune into our podcast, Love Learning You. Know that we often do, I often do these pop-up workshops here on YouTube, and they are not necessarily YouTube or podcast episodes. So you want to be sure to subscribe here, because I often put out new workshops or things that are up and coming like this. You will often see filtered through here. So take care. Let's continue to get compassionately curious together. Thanks for tuning in, enjoying coffee with me on the patio. And until we meet again on our patios, take care.